Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Once again, those who worship the sky god of global boiling are using their religion to scare the public into holding the line on the great climate boiling scam. Is it still global boiling? Or have we now moved to global scolding? This fear-mongering, this scaring, as I've been explaining for many years, involves taking money from hard-working Australians and giving it to parasitic billionaires to fix the climate. Senator Whish-Wilson's latest motion reheats an old scare, a debunked scare. The Great Barrier Reef is dying. In 2016, the Washington Post ran an article titled, "And Then We Wept. Scientists say 93% of the Great Barrier Reef is now bleached." In 2022, the Washington Post ran an article titled, "Great Barrier Reef has the most coral in decades." And then in 2024, they ran an article titled, "Fatal Heatwave Strikes Unspoiled Swath of Great Barrier Reef." And it went on to say, quote, "Water temperature data suggests the toll could approach that of 2016, when 30% of the reef's corals died after suffering through what were then unprecedented levels of heat stress." Can't they see it's cyclical? Hang on. Wasn't that 93%? Nah. That's just the mainstream media's scare figure used at the time to appease their owners, the same predatory billionaires that profit from the global boiling scam. It was never an accurate figure, never credible, yet the Greens peddled it, repeatedly peddled it. In summary, the reef had a serious bleaching event in 2016, and within a few years the coral extent was back to normal. By the way, the first scientifically recorded bleaching was 1926. Scientific records show bleaching has been a natural part of the Great Barrier Reef cycles and other reef cycles for millennia. Fact. This is not some esoteric discussion. These chicken little claims from the Greens have consequences. Scare stories about the reef dying cause tourists, including international tourists, to cancel their holidays on the Great Barrier Reef, destroying livelihoods on the Great Barrier Reef communities and the Queensland East Coast. And people instead go to a country where their own politicians are not scaring off the tourists. Jobs are lost every time the Greens use the Great Barrier Reef as a political football. There's not even any science behind their claims. At times, the reef can be a naturally fragile ecosystem. We know that. Certain naturally occurring events can impact it. The greatest danger for the Barrier Reef is flooding. Tropical cyclones dump fresh water into a river catchment system that carries rainwater hundreds of kilometres onto the Great Barrier Reef. Freshwater plumes kill saltwater coral polyps, and the event is declared a bleaching event. All natural, all cyclical, quite common. What did we have 3 months ago in Queensland? A severe flood event, entirely natural. What do we have now? Coral bleaching, entirely natural. Don't take my word for it. Please read James Cook University's article titled "Back-to-Back Cyclones and Flood Plume Impacts on the Great Barrier Reef," which confirmed freshwater coral bleaching was recorded along the reef. Now the climate boiling scammers are trying to blame this on natural climate variability. So let me give you the inconvenient truth about that. I want you to reference the study titled "Great Barrier Reef Study Shows How Reef Copes with Rapid Sea Level Rise" from the University of Sydney website. I'll publish the link. Quote from the study: "Using unprecedented analysis of 12 new drilled reef cores, with data going back more than 8,000 years, the study shows that there have been 3 distinct phases of reef growth since the end of the Pleistocene era about 11,000 years ago." Goes on to say, "We wanted to understand past reef resilience to multiple environmental stresses during the formation of the modern reef," said lead author Kelsey Sanborn, a PhD student in the School of Geosciences at the University of Sydney. It continues, "The study was an international collaboration published in Sedimentary Geology, which revealed a period between 8,000 and 7,000 years ago when the reef growth slowed as it was exposed to multiple stresses, including likely increases in sediment and nutrient flux on the reef." I wonder What could cause the sediment and nutrient flux that damaged the reef 8,000 years ago? Well, it can't be coal-fired power stations. It can't be internal combustion engines or people living in freestanding homes on quarter-acre blocks. And it certainly couldn't have been air travel. What could it be? Of course, I have it. Eating meat. That's it. If the local Aboriginal population had just stopped eating red meat and instead grew soybeans, those tropical storms would not have dumped nutrient-rich floodwaters onto the reef. Study co-author, Associate Professor Jodie Webster said, quote, "We need to understand the past in order to predict the future. This paper and Kelsey's broader research examine how sea level, surface temperature, sediment in the water, nutrient influx and energy inputs into the reef system affect its vulnerability to environmental change," he said. It goes on, "The reef system survives because of a delicate balance between these environmental factors, all natural." End of quote. Whenever the balance of the reef is disturbed, a bleaching event occurs. It's entirely natural. It's in a symbiotic relationship with other organisms. There's no doubt that when an unusually hot day corresponds to an unusually low tide, the reef will bleach. And it will bleach from a cyclone event and many other disturbances. And that reminds me, I went scuba diving with some media off Keppel Island, and we said, "See the corals recovering from a cyclone." And the journalist said, "But you haven't seen the real bleaching 1,000 kilometres north. There's 1,000 kilometres of reef between where we were, with a healthy reef, and their claimed bleaching event. They just ignore the healthy reef." For the Greens to use Mother Nature to promote their climate change scam is wrong. It's utterly wrong. For reef researchers to pretend reef damage is due to climate boiling and then ask for more money to research climate change is wrong. It's dishonest and it's scientific fraud. The truth is the ocean is warmed primarily from the sun, with a secondary contribution from geothermal activity. Fact. The atmosphere, the thing being blamed for heating up and bleaching the reef, only warms the top millimetre or so of the ocean surface. That's not enough to cause any harm, and by the way, we can see that in the seasonal impact. The climate boiling scammers can blame their sky god of warming all they like. They can demand large homes, big cars, airplanes, cattle, sheep, clothing, cheap power and so much more be sacrificed on the altar of their climate boiling beliefs. Saying a lie does not make the claimed science real. Repeating a lie doesn't make the claimed science real. Our weather patterns are normal, entirely natural, and so are the patterns on the reef. If the Greens want to be useful, they should campaign against wind turbines, the installation of which requires whole tops of mountains being blown off mountains across northern Queensland right now, disturbing sediment and arsenic that flows through underground aquifers and winds up on the Great Barrier Reef, making these natural flood events even worse. One Nation care about the natural environment because we value the natural environment. That's just one of the many reasons we oppose wind turbines in pristine bushland, and for that matter, near human beings. We oppose industrial solar on farmland and on bushland. We oppose national parks being carved up for power lines, especially the Snowy 2 abomination. And we oppose land clearing of old-growth forests for any purpose, including grazing. One Nation is now the party of true environmentalism. One Nation is the party of true environmentalism. And the Greens? Well, they're the party of promoting the political agendas and pockets of parasitic billionaires over the best interests of the natural environment. The Greens peddle the United Nations World Economic Forum anti-human agenda that is in turn based on a lie, a false assumption. That lie, that false assumption, is that human civilisation and the environment are mutually exclusive. That is the opposite of reality. The reality is that for human civilisation to have a future, we must have a healthy natural environment. And history over the last 170 years shows that the health of the environment depends on human civilisation, because industrial civilisation minimises human impact on the natural environment. And what has produced human civilisation, which is so beneficial for the environment? High energy, low cost, ultra reliable hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas. Before these fuels, humans needed, for lighting, needed whale oil, killing whales. Before these hydrocarbon fuels, heating and cooking needed timber from chopping trees. The area of land in the developed continents covered by forests over the last 100 years has increased 30%, because we're no longer chopping trees down to cook and to heat. The best friend of whales, the best friend of forests, is hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas. As a servant to the fine people of Queensland and Australia, I cherish human progress. I cherish human flourishing. I cherish hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas. I admire human progress and human initiative. I appreciate human progress. Thank you.